When it's time, it's time. So we're going to get rolling. We appreciate everybody being here. So just a little bit of context to our session today. Our next Leadership Academy session officially on the calendar is in October. And as things continue to change, I and the team, we felt compelled that there were some issues that couldn't wait. And so we wanted to address those today because they are timely and things that everybody needs to be addressing and be dealing with and from a leadership standpoint. So you're going to hear today from myself a little later on. You'll hear from Pam Peterson, our leader of Total Patient Service, and Kelly Hemrick, who's part of our practice advisor team, as well as Chris Taconis, who's part of our practice advisor team. And the rest of our practice advisor team is deployed around the country and doing some virtual work today. So we're grateful that dentistry is back online and is being highly productive, especially with everything that we've gone through. And we're going to talk about some of the current opportunities that we all have to do an even better job. So here's just a quick overview of what we'll talk about. First off is some up-to-date suggestions on what to do if a team member tests positive, as well as patients. It's now, obviously with case counts going up, this is becoming more and more of an issue. And so we wanted to have a discussion about how that's being handled and some things that you can do. Our recommendations, we have some people here that have had some specific experience with that. So we will have some specific recommendations on that. We're going to talk about what we are now calling COVID scheduling, cancellations, and no-shows. So we've noticed over the last few weeks, as the news ebbs and flows around the country in terms of case counts, we're watching cancellation rates fluctuate in different parts of the country, and it's a trend. And so we're going to talk about things you can do to mitigate what happens to the schedule so you can have a more productive schedule. We're also going to talk about upgrading your team. So this whole situation has facilitated some changes in staffing for various different reasons for different people. And so we're going to have some team discussions about what that means for the entire team and what you can do to keep things focused on a positive direction with your existing team, as well as any changes that you need to make. And then finally, we're going to have a discussion about mental floss. And I'm really excited about this portion of it in terms of keeping your entire team mentally and emotionally and physically in good shape as we work through what we're doing. So that's a quick overview. Our goal is 90 minutes. So we'll do some Q&A along the way, as well as at the end. We will stay here as long as everybody has questions. And that's the purpose of this, is conversation as well as presentation. So with that, we'll start with the first area, which is what happens if a team member tests positive, or you test positive, or a patient tests positive. And Pam Peterson, who leads our company, is going to lead us off this morning. So Pam, it's all you. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. So Pam, unmute. And then as we comment, feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a comment to make. That way, at least we won't have any background noise.
Sounds good. All right, thank you, Steve. All right, so when a team member tests positive, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back a couple of steps. I can't believe it's been almost 4 months now. When we first started this together with the majority of you that are on this webinar today, is we talked about the key things to have in place that are mandated. And so Kelly and I are going to tag team this. She's going to go over the commitments that we made so we can combat entropy. Next slide, please. All right, Kelly, you're up.
Thank you, Pam. And as we travel across the country in dental practices, we see a lot of systems that we've talked about before, and we appreciate the team members and the doctors who are taking all these precautions, not only helping us as practice advisors feel safe, but helping the patients and their team members feel safe. So we are going to go through those reminders on how we can help everyone feel safe when they return to your office. And the first thing is taking temperatures. The team members, when they arrive back to work, and when they arrive in the office to work, and when they depart daily, and recording those temperatures. So not only taking those, recording those as they come in and as they leave. Very important to do. Patients waiting in their cars. The new reception area is their vehicle, and hopefully on these hot days they have air conditioning, so their core temperatures are cool, so they don't have an elevated temperature when they arrive in your clinical area. Those reception areas are revamped. If patients are waiting in the reception area, they have these 6 feet apart, so there's social distancing in the reception area. Most of the offices that we are seeing are the walk through. The reception area is now the area where they walk through back to the clinical area. And the patients are wearing masks or protective face coverings until they're seated back in the clinical area. Schedule disinfecting of all surfaces in the business area after every patient. And with these systems, what we're finding is that one team member is responsible for these systems. And just like all of our great teams, all the team members are pitching in and helping when they can to make sure that everything happens in a timely fashion, and they're picking up and helping other team members when they can. So that's great to see when we're out in practices. And lastly, making sure the clinical and business team members adhere to the PPE protocols based on their position, so that the team members are safe and the patients feel safe as well. So we're all adhering to what we agreed upon, and so that everyone feels safe. So now Pam's going to talk about, so we've done the review, and Pam's going to go over the next step on what to do in the event that there is an exposure to a team member, or maybe a patient has an exposure in your office. So Pam, let's go from there.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, so this beautiful image is an image that we're all in this together. This is our beautiful country. There are some mandates that are federal that we all are required to follow, and then there are some that are mandates based on your state. So you'll hear myself and our team refer back to make sure that you know the mandates for your state as well, and you can make the modifications accordingly. All right, next slide, please. All right, at TOPS, we copy genius. This is a flow chart created by California Dental Association. There are a number of handouts that we have today that are going to be in your hand, so you don't have to worry about taking pictures. You will get copies of the handouts that we have. This is one of them. Although this was created by California, there may be slight modifications that you'll make by your state, and it's a great flow chart. So that it tells you what to do if. And so there are 5 things that I want you to focus on this flow chart. And the first one is, number 1, what to do if a patient reports symptoms within 14 days of a visit to your office. Number 2, what to do if an employee reports symptoms. Number 3, what to do if an employee reports exposure to a COVID-19 positive individual. So those are 3 things that you may have been faced with already, and I'm sure in the future you will encounter this. There's 2 things that I want you to pay attention to. Is number 1, is it high risk or is it low risk? You as the doctor, your responsibility is to always refer the team member to seek medical attention, so that you won't have to be the one to deem is it high risk or low risk. But those are 2 really important factors. We'll do the first one together. Out of the top 3 that I just went over, the second line that's in the dark blue, all of them are the same, which is to make sure that you record the information, the date, the information provided by the patient or the team member. So that is the same for all 3. And when you get to the part where it's high risk or low risk, that may differ. And so if we're doing the first one together is if a patient reports symptoms within 14 days of a visit, you record the symptoms based on what the patient shares with you. If it's a negative diagnosis, you want to record that as well. And the only way that they would know that is you refer them to their medical provider for testing. The red box is suspected or positive. Perform contact tracing of patients and employees in close contact. Now, the word tracing isn't our language, and it is CDC's language. Tracing means just to follow up with the patient by contacting them if they have been in your practice within that amount of time that the patient reports that have been exposed in your practice. And we don't expect for you to just go and just make up verbiage. We have a surprise for you. Chris Taconis will go over a little bit later of verbal skills that we recommend that you use in the event that you need to reschedule patients or call a patient to let them know to seek medical attention due to an exposure in your office. And so we have that already packaged for you, and Chris will go over it with you later. When you look at the next two boxes, you just follow the diagram where it's your flow chart. And so my recommendation is to know this yourself as the doctor. And if you work closely with a practice administrator, director of operations, or an office manager, make sure that they are second when you're going over this information with them. But this comes from you, doctor. One of the things that you'll hear me say to you is you cannot outsource leadership when it comes to this. So the buck stops with you, and I know you got it. All right, next slide, please. All right, Barbara Freet, who has been a resource partner with Crown Counsel for a number of years, has a wealth of information and knowledge. She posted this on the email network, and I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of it. So this is actually 2 pages, and this is a part of your handout as well. It talks about the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. You will see this as FFCRA, and I chose not to do another acronym because I'm all acronymed out. When you see this, it will be in an acronym. You'll see it'll say FFCRA. And Barbara actually outlined everything, what to do. And you see in the asterisk that we added at the very bottom is to know your state regulations. It also tells you about payment, if you have to pay your team member or not. And every state and practice will be different because there are some areas in there where you can opt out, and some of the information is across the board for larger practices of 50 or more employees. So if you have questions about this, after you read over it, please make sure that you reach out to Barbara. She'll be able to give you key information based on your state. All right, so let me give you a recap. The next slide, Steve. All right, so the recap is first, make sure that you go over your flow chart. Know your regulations for your practice and your state and what steps you're going to take. The second is to make sure you read over the document from Barbara Freet so that you can identify areas that you need to know more information on based on your practice to, in the event that you have a patient or a team member that tests positive. Okay. Next is supporting a quarantine team member, and many of you have already done this. Next slide, Steve. I think I call you Sleeve instead of Steve.
That's okay. I know what you mean.
All right. There's a number of things that you can do when supporting a team member, and the main thing you want to do is to make sure that they know that you care about them. And we just threw a few things up here, which is if you have a team member that is at low risk, which means they have the ability to work from home, give them an assignment. They can make recare calls, they can follow up with insurance, or if there's some task that they've never had time to do that is a technical task, they could actually do that at home as well. And these are team members that are asymptomatic, no symptoms, and they have the ability to function. Team members that are at high risk, I would not recommend that you do this because they may not be healthy enough to take on responsibilities at home. You want to make sure that they are well before you do that. If you have team morning opportunity meetings, weekly team meetings, FaceTime them if they are well enough to be a part of your team so that they don't feel isolated. Send them books, flowers, text message. care packages. And I saved the last one because that was our team shared this one with me. I said, what is a meal train? Well, a meal train is when all of your team members get together, they look at the calendar, and they decide each day who's going to cook what meal, and then they drop it off to the team member that is in quarantine on their porch, practicing safe social distancing. And so every day they will have a meal from the meal train from your team. This also will give you something to laugh about later because not all cooks are the same. There may be some meals that shouldn't be on the meal train, and it comes from the heart. So I thought that would be a really great idea as far as the meal train. All right, next slide, please. All right, so now that you know what to do in the event that a team member is out and how to support them, this is making the adjustments and staying flexible. One of the things that I have learned since the pandemic is having a plan that is flexible, which means it doesn't need to be solid in the event that you have to go left as opposed to right. And so that's the key thing that we're going to talk about quite a bit today so that you can have a solid plan that's flexible. So let's talk about what that looks like. Next slide, please. A recommendation is to sit down with your team and have a strategic planning session, a strategy. Now, this isn't using your weekly team meeting agenda or your morning opportunity meeting agenda or talking about new patients or numbers. This is a strategy that is focused on what you need in your practice now, which is that word that it's 2 words that we've hurled around a lot, and many of you have been successful at doing it, and some have not had the ability to put it in place because you haven't had a strategic planning session. Let me tell you what that is. Next slide, please. Those 2 words is cross-training. Cross-training is key, and you want to cross-train not because you need it. You want to cross-train because it's the right thing to do for your practice, and you also build team members up within your practice by helping them learn something new. So when you're sitting down with your strategic planning session, gave you some ideas, and this is not limited to, you could easily add to, but this is a start. So ask your team members each 3 things. Ask your clinical team members, what are the 3 things that you would like the clinical team members to learn about in the business area? And what are the 3 things you would like the business team members to learn about the clinical area? Now, this is something that does not require a license. And an example would be if we sat down and you put this on the table for the team members to decide, you said, okay, we're going to pick 2 things for the front office, 2 things for the clinical area. If I am a clinical assistant and Steve Anderson is a business team member, I would say, Doctor, I will take on sterilization and I will train Steve. I will train Steve the proper way to put on PPE and the proper way to take it off. I would tell him all of our systems regarding breaking up and tearing down a room, making sure that he knows how to do things safely and accurately. And then I would also have Steve feed everything back to me so that I can ensure that he got everything that I trained him on. Then we would report back to the doctors. Because as doctors, as a leader, you don't have to do everything. You just have to ensure that everything gets done. And by doing this, in the event that a team member has to self-quarantine and can't come in, you have a solid plan. So if you're going to panic, I would rather panic with a plan than without. Next slide, please. I know you've seen this quite a bit. This is managing emotions. We would have to manage emotions whether COVID-19 were present or not. We all go through stages of grief, and not necessarily in the order that it's always presented, which is anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Sometimes someone will just not have a clear picture of what's going on and just start bargaining. Your job as the leader is to identify where the team member is, not to talk the team member out of being where they are, give them room to work through it, and always know that you don't have to understand everything that you accept. Your job as the leader is to give them room and then get them back on the right track. A good idea with this going over stages, 5 stages of grief, is to have a mini training with the team members as well, so that they have a clear understanding. When you train them what this means, they'll be able to manage themselves and actually tell you where they are and what they need from you, as opposed to you having to be the one to dictate. And I know that that'll make you happy. All right, so recap on that is, number 1 is schedule a strategic planning session with your team so that you can grow eagles in your team so that they can learn something new. Number 2 is go over 5 stages of grief so that they'll know where they are. They'll know that it's a normal process that they're going through, so that they can work themselves to acceptance and be able to share with you where they are. Okay, next slide. All right, number 2, you're in for a treat. This is Chris Taconis. She's going to go over all things scheduling and share that amazing verbal skills that I just shared with you earlier that she was going to go over with you. So Chris, you're up.
Thanks, Pam.
Chris, before you get started, I'll just insert this quick comment. As we go along, if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box, and we may address them at that point, but feel free to chime in. Not to have a secondary seminar going on in the chat box, we don't do that, but if you do have questions about anything that we're discussing, feel free to enter it there. All right, Chris, this is, like I said when we got started, the whole scheduling thing has become, it's changed, obviously, because we're doing more, especially if you've followed everything that we've done over the last couple of months, a lot more phone work in terms of what you're doing with your patients before they come in, as well as it's taking a lot more to keep the schedule put together as case numbers rise and fall, and the media has a heyday on everything that's going on, managing patient emotions and managing the schedule. So Chris is going to have some very specific tips, including specific verbal skills. So Chris, the verbal skills queen, it is yours. Sorry,
No pressure.
on the screen. My
No
apologies.
pressure.
I did not disable the
Well, yeah, Steve, that's what my list looks like as I feverishly start working on the schedule.
I didn't scribble on your slide there, Chris.
It's pretty. I was actually getting jealous that I didn't have any scrolling on my. Jeez.
So let's go ahead to the next slide if we could, Steve. I just called him Sleeve.
Oh, you called him Sleeve?
Don't know what's going on. Power of suggestion. So just like Steve said, you know, with what's going on in the practice, outside the practice, you've got potential for patients that want to either cancel their appointment or reschedule, as well as if you have a team member that has to be out due to COVID, we've got to figure out a plan and make sure that we're ready and prepared for those things when they happen. Pam was talking about how much time has passed, and I think most of us here can agree that in the beginning, we may not have known anybody directly connected to us that had COVID. And over the course of the last couple of months, all of us, including myself, have had doctors or team members that have had to go through having the virus and what it did to impact the practice. So the first thing is to go back to what Pam said, have a strategy and have a planning session. Your goal is to learn to be flexible and adjust the schedule in the event you have a provider or a team member that's out. Next slide, please, Steve.
You got it. I was trying to make a quick change there to see if I could get, we're good, Chris.
Awesome.
Okay.
So let's talk about the rescheduling part of it. You know, when you come up with a plan, it's not just about, okay, do this. It's also about who is going to go ahead with the action and who is going to help whom. You all have to get together and step out of the box of what your typical job description is. Really look at where you can fill in where there's a gap and help the team if your team member has to be out or if a patient decides that they don't want to come in due to what's going on around us. So remember that as you're making a plan for what happens in the practice, a lot of states are also different. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Let's say that your doctor has to be out and you don't know what to do with what's on the schedule already. Some states, you can see hygiene patients still without a doctor in the practice. So you can still continue to do as much as you can to produce and take care of patients without the doctor there, and that's how the practice can continue to thrive. Other states don't allow that. So it's coming up with a different plan to still be productive, and you can be doing other things that you don't get to do while you're seeing patients all day long. So could you go to the next slide, please, Steve? So here are some examples. I'm going to go over some verbiage for you in the event you have to reschedule patients if your doctor or your hygienist is out. Even if you have a patient that's trying to cancel, we want to do everything we can to be sensitive, have empathy of what they're going through. They're going through the 5 stages of change as well as we are. And so we want to make sure that even if that appointment changes, we schedule them for the future. Don't let it go, say goodbye, and then don't revisit having them come back in the future. So I'd like to give an example of what you could say in regards to rescheduling a patient that would still have a frame of empathy, warmth, and competence, and still make sure that you're building trust about what we're doing on our end to keep them safe. So Pam, would you mind being my patient? Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Pam, this is Chris calling from Dr. Anderson's office. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you.
Well, great. Well, Pam, as you know, your health and safety is very important to us, and we are taking ongoing steps to follow recommended scheduling and social distancing guidelines. So with that being said, I need your help.
Okay.
In order to maintain social distancing guidelines and to keep you safe, we would like to move your reserved appointment to Wednesday, August the 12th or Thursday, August the 13th at 3 o'clock. Which day would work best with your schedule?
Thursday.
Fantastic. I will go ahead and reserve that time. And Pam, we really appreciate your patience and flexibility as we continue to adapt. If there's anything that we can do for you before your appointment on that day, please give us a call because we're here for you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you then.
Same here.
So
just as Chris, before you go on, nicely done, ladies. In case you missed this, so all of the key things that we're talking about today are going to be in your inbox if they are not in there already, with all of the things that we've talked about today. So that whole piece there will be there. I'm just going to weigh in here real quick, if that's all right. With everything that's going on and all the emotions that surround it on the patient side as well as on the team side, if I can't emphasize this enough, we cannot leave anything to the imagination. In today's environment, you cannot say, go call this patient and tell them that we need to reschedule. We are listening to phone calls in dental offices and with jaws dropped on some of the things that are being said that should not be said from a patient service standpoint. So when emotions get high, a lot of times all ration and logic just disappears. And it's, in some cases, it's becoming, you remember the show, kids say the darndest things. Well, it's like dental team members are saying some of the darndest things. So this piece that Chris has scripted out, if I could just highly recommend, you take this, you give it to your team member, have them go through it and say, this is exactly how we want to approach the situation and exactly what we want to have said, right? You got to role play this stuff, skill practice it, but don't leave it to the imagination. Chris, let's just a question here, and I'm not sure who Doc is, because I think just about everybody here is a doc. So whoever that is, you're welcome to unmute yourself and reveal yourself. The question,
And
I'll
then,
read the question, and then let's discuss it, because everybody, a lot of people are dealing with this issue. So the question is, we have no time in our schedule to add more meetings with our canceling patients. I assume that means appointments. And no place to put them for a couple of months in hygiene. So I guess hygiene's 4 months out. So whoever wrote that, oh, you're unmuted. Go for it. So you're out 4 months, is that right? Whoever Doc is.
Maybe they're not responding.
I can see and you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
I'd love
Why don't
to
you address the
some of
question?
that. So, so obviously that's a great problem to have, because some practices have nothing available in a couple months, some do. Part of this is still preventing cancellations as well. And when I talk about having a frame of empathy, I mean that you can respond to the patient that calls, let's say, to cancel, and say, I understand, yet you don't have to agree. So how I would do that is I would say to them, I really understand what you're going through, and other patients have shared with me that they're feeling the same way. Can I share with you what they've done and the outcome? And I talk about them coming in for their appointment that they reserved still, not canceling that appointment, and that they were happy to see that we were following guidelines and they felt safe and protected, that we were protecting their health when they arrived. That's one part of it, so that you're not worried about how are we going to put this person somewhere else in a spot we don't have. And then the other part of it is figuring out a way to open up or put them on a VIP list in the event that an opening occurs. If you don't have a space to put them, I understand that's a challenge. And so it's going to be you and the team doing something even at the morning opportunity meeting. If you don't have a chance to have a huddle in the middle of the day, talk about it, look at the schedule, map it out every day. Even if you don't have the problem, talk at the mom about, okay, in the event of, where are we going to put that next patient? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, that was the Schmitz, by the way.
they can't unmute.
I told them to keep typing. So, all right. Thank you for addressing that, Chris.
Right.
All right. Moving on.
So let's say you have to leave a message, which a lot of us have to do. I'm a firm believer that you have to be strategic with this so you can get a return call. And there's nothing better than being a name dropper. What I mean is, blame the doctor. The patient will respond when they know a doctor wants them to call them back. So I simply say, hi, this is Chris from Dr. Anderson's office. Dr. Anderson asked me to give you a call regarding your appointment with him on Wednesday, August the 13th. Will you please return his call? Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you today. And hopefully that will generate some urgency for them to respond, so that when they call back and they say, Dr. Anderson wanted me to call him, I can go ahead and share with them what the purpose of the call is. Next slide, please, Steve.
You got it.
So I want to mention that I've had personal experiences with our TOPS doctors, some TOPS doctors that have had both team members with COVID, and I've had a couple doctors that have had it themselves. And it was a really great experience to go through, because we learned together. And I want to share those things with you so that you don't have to go through that process. You'll have the answers.
And
One of the things,
Chris, if you assemble your team like it is in this picture right now, I'm sure everyone will get it. So
true. The whole point of this image is about masterminding. So I had a doctor who can remain anonymous, and she unexpectedly came down with COVID. She was exposed to COVID, so she got the virus, and immediately she called me, and we went into game plan mode, and we talked about resources. And one of the things that I think was fantastic is that she masterminds with other dentists in her community, and it allowed that group, because they talked about it, for them to be a resource for her. She had another doctor that she was connected to that was able to come into the practice and help out. And I know that's not always the situation for everybody. My point is that she was networking and keeping those relationships going so that she can find different ways to resource and have some help. So that was one of the most important things that she did so that the practice could stay thriving while she had to be home quarantined. So there's ways to look at things outside of the box to be solution oriented. The other part of this, next slide please, Steve, is we had to make a decision about what to do. Unfortunately, when she called her malpractice insurance, they didn't give her the advice that we thought was ideal. She's in a small town, and it's really important to have a great reputation. And the last thing we wanted to have happen is for word to get out that this practice was exposed and nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
And we didn't do due diligence to keep our patients safe. And that's what we're saying we're doing. We've got to do what we're doing, do what we say we're doing. So we decided to get together, and we came up with what to say to patients. We decided to call patients that we saw in the last week. And again, when you're calling, the goal here is to reach out as a courtesy and let the patient know that, to show warmth and competence while you're on the phone, and really maintain the trust. That's what this call will do. So this is how it would sound. Hello, Pam. This is Chris from Dr. Anderson's office. How are you? Great. She's
No,
muted.
just nod my head. I'm well, thank you, Chris.
Great. Well, Dr. Anderson asked me to contact you to inform you that we've had a positive test in the practice recently, and we want you to know that we sanitize the office and the building as we do every day, and that individual is in quarantine.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that you know, I know we saw you last week, and we wanted to make sure to let you know so that you also know we're continuing to follow all the necessary guidelines to always keep you safe and keep you updated in the event that happened. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Now, do you have any questions or concerns for me?
No, if there's anything that I need to do, will you kind of let me know what I should do?
Absolutely. Would you like us to do that?
Yes, that would be helpful.
I'd be happy to do that. And please know that we're always going to make sure that we protect your health, we protect you, and keep you safe when you come into our practice.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. What we found when the team members called patients with this plan in place, with this verbiage, we had really positive feedback. And we didn't have any patients try to cancel their future appointment in the practice. They were very appreciative. And there were even some reviews that the doctor received, positive reviews, after the team did this. So it really ended up working in their favor versus running the risk of someone knowing that they ignored it. So next slide, Steve, please. Okay, so let's talk about what do you do to prevent a scheduling crisis? A lot of our doctors have been doing everything with their teams to scramble together when you got back into your practices to fix the schedule and make sure that we, go back and take care of the people that had to miss appointments, and then what to do with the people that were on the current schedule, and then what to do with the future. So the biggest thing here is, what do we do to prevent a huge bubble or even a hole in the fall when we had patients from the spring that should be coming back to the fall? So there's a number of ways that you guys can strategize this. One of the ideas is to take care of the patients that are sitting on your schedule right now. And any patient that was supposed to come in the spring and their next time to be due is in the fall as their next 6-month appointment, we went ahead and we simply scheduled them for that appointment. We didn't try to make up time with people that missed March and April and part of May, trying to get them in now. We just decided, let's go ahead and assume that since their 6-month appointment is coming up right away, we'll go ahead and contact them and let them know we went ahead and reserved a new appointment for you. We've got you covered. We've got a time reserved for you. And that way it also prevented the hole or that huge gap from happening in the fall when it would have otherwise been filled with those patients from the spring. So the key here is getting together again, being proactive, and really looking at what can you do to accommodate those patients and go back to old habits. Before COVID, y'all were working on your recare list. You were working on treatment pending. We've got to look back to those patients as well to fill potential gaps that are going to be happening in the fall for lack of having patients to schedule for future appointments. Next slide, Steve. Okay, so with that, I'd like to recap. The key things that you want to focus on is make sure that you get together with your team to strategize and adjust your schedule, be flexible. Talk about different ways that you can accommodate patients, as well as look to your team members to go outside the box so you can learn and work on how to support each other where you otherwise may not be in the back or in the front. Look at ways that you can go outside your box. The second thing is practice your verbal skills. Utilize the verbal skills that TOPS is providing you so that you know how to communicate with your patients and still maintain that trust. And last, talk together to take steps so you can prevent the hole or the gap that's going to potentially happen in the fall. Look at your resources with ReCare. Look at how you are putting your patients that have missed appointments in the spring and how you can utilize them coming in the fall. That's up to you,
Excellent. Thank you,
Steve.
Chris.
Back to you.
All right, Pam, all yours.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chris. So number 3, which is upgrading your team. All right, next slide, please, Steve. So let me explain this. When I say upgrade your team, does not mean out with the old, in with the new. This is in with the old, upgrade the old. And I don't mean old in age. It could be old habits of doing the same thing over and over. An upgrade means I said I wasn't going to do any initials or acronyms, but I fibbed to you. I call this LSN, learn something new. When upgrading your team, that's what it's about, is learning something new. And you as a leader, I'm going to talk to you first, doctors, about who you have now, what you're upgrading, and who you bring on with the upgraded team. Next slide, please. All right, so in the beginning, there's top 3 things or more that we've always wanted, which is making sure you have a great attitude, open to training, on time, and those were some key things that I just threw out. Those were yesterday. Today, those things are expected. Next slides, please, Steve. what I'm looking for today is a go-getter. And if you were to look at a go-getter, there's so many definitions of a go-getter, and you're going to add to it what a go-getter means to you. Being the doctor leading the practice, leaders lead leaders. And so when you have someone that comes on that joins your team, or that's currently on your team, that will do whatever it takes, bring ideas, have a clear understanding of what your vision is, and execute, and it's not painful when you're working together, that's a go-getter. A go-getter will do whatever it takes. They exude confidence, and they're committed. They have enthusiasm, and they want to know your plan. I was working with a large group practice on a virtual training last week, and she said, we've been so busy interviewing. And I was like, for what? Every position. She said, there's so many people that are looking for employment. And I was like, well, what is it that's most important to them today? Because I flipped on her. I was supposed to be training her, and she started training me, and she said, well, things are still about the same, what team members are looking for, but the number one thing that they said that they wanted was a strong leader and stability. And I said, well, what does that mean? She said, a plan in place. Just tell us what to do, and if it's not favorable, we're okay, as long as you include us in what's going on and not keeping us in the dark. And also letting us know your flexible plan. I said, well, that's a great interviewing strategy that you have of knowing what you want on your team. So when you think of a go-getter, you may think the same way as I do. I think of a go-getter as a koi fish. A koi fish, which is the beautiful orange fish where you see they're all on top of each other, but they're not fighting. And they eat all the time. No matter when you go up to a koi pond and you hold food, they open their mouths. That's the type of team member that you want, someone that has a thirst for learning, that knows that you are a doctor, that CE is important to you. You always work with a coach. You hang out with like-minded individuals like what we're doing today. Those are the team members that you want on your team. In my past life, I was a director of operations, and when I would interview, I said this one-liner over and over: if you don't have a thirst for learning, for constant never-ending improvement, like training, and have the ability to work with a coach in addition with the doctor leading the team, you would hate our environment, and it's not the environment for you. I said, because it's not uncommon for us to have training days and you're not in the audience, you're actually part of it. It's a workout. And those are the people that you want to bring on your team. And when you decide what a go-getter is for you and your team, you stick with it with no debate, and don't try and talk yourself out of talking this person in to being what you need for your team. Hire the person that you need for your practice, not what that team member needs, but what you need for your practice, and you can grow together. That is a go-getter. So your homework on this with upgrading your team is first meet with your current team and said, you know what, I'm so excited to be working with a group of go-getters. If you thought about in our practice, one or two things that you would like to learn so that it would put us in a better position together as a team, what would that be? And give them time to think, and then give you that information. And it'll tell you, and this costs no money. It actually, you can't put a price tag on what the team member will gain if you allow them to decide what they want to do and grow in your practice. Also, this is a bonus. As a go-getter, I work for Dr. Smith and Pamela, and I am excited because they're always doing the right thing for the right reason. We've got into a position where we don't have a place for patients, and we don't even have a place for each other. So Dr. Smith came up and said, you know, there's some information I need to give to you guys as leadership, and I know that it'll make us stronger. I have nowhere to put it. I came up with some ideas, and so did Pam. They may not be good ideas. What would you recommend? I'll tell you our idea. Our idea was maybe we could have one Saturday of the month, we'll do a Zoom call from your home, and we just have coffee together and talk through stages of grief. We have coffee together. We talk through cross-training, and you can decide. Now, if that doesn't work, come up with something else that we can do as a team so that we have room for each other while we are taking care of our patients, not having a place for them to go. How does that sound, team? And they would be trucking with you. So that's what a go-getter would do. And if I work for the Smiths, I would go, oh yeah, I'm up early Saturday morning and I'm looking for someone to talk to. Let's do 30 minutes on a Zoom call and have breakfast together. So that's your homework. Identify what a go-getter is for your practice and execute on the plan. You're up, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you, Pam. All right, section number 4. This is what we chose to call mental floss. And let me just kind of give you the context of this. We're going to talk about 5 specific skills. These are not necessarily new. I think you'll hear, those of you that have been with us for a long time are going to hear some things that are echoes of things that we have talked about for decades. And the context of this, interestingly enough, the whole area of mental health during everything that we're going through is flourishing, right? Because there are so many, with social distancing and quarantining, there's residual mental health issues. Specifically, they are now, if you've kept track of this, the whole area of disaster mental health has now come to the forefront. And this is a worldwide disaster. You could categorize it as that. And those that specialize in this area are seeing some of the same symptoms now that they see in major disasters, whether it be a natural disaster or a personal disaster. And so the same skills apply. So we're going to talk about 5 specific things that apply personally. So I hope you'll apply these personally to yourself, as well as carry these back and have a discussion with your team about these 5 skills. We believe that there are 5 things everybody needs to be doing. So again, some are team related, some are individual, some are both. So here's the 5 skills. Skill number 1 is calming. In other words, knowing what you can do and need to do that works for you to calm yourself down. Those of you that have worked with us using Culture Index, one of the things that it measures is the logic scale, how logical somebody is versus how emotional they are. And those that score higher on the emotional scale probably have a need to get more plugged into calming skills maybe than others, but we'll talk about that. Skill number 2 is self-efficacy. And if that's not a term that you're familiar with, I'm going to drill down onto that one pretty deep. It has some specific things, even 5 specific things that we'll talk about. Skill number 3 is connectedness, staying connected with other people. Skill number 4 is hope. And then skill number 5 is sense of safety. And I'm not sure that these are in any particular order. I would say in the dental profession, if we were going to put these in order of priority, I would probably put number 5 as number 1, that the sense of safety is foremost. And we'll talk about some specifics there as well. So let's talk about calming first. So this is with a heightened sense of emotion on many, many fronts, at home, at the office. These are, basic skills that we all need to get up and get on top of. And Toffer, you are welcome to unmute yourself. So Toffer Coffin, or Chafin, excuse me, his wife is actually in the mental health field. He and I have had some discussions in the past about this, not specifically as the pandemic. But I'd love to have your comments here as we go through. You're unmuted. Can you speak? I want to make sure you can be heard.
Hello.
Hey, there he is. Perfect. Thank you. Any comments here real quick before we get started on this from what you guys are experiencing, since she's in the middle of this?
Yeah, so when the pandemic happened, she was already in a full schedule beforehand, with mental health, before everything happened, it was already full. You'd have to be on a waiting list maybe 6 months before you saw a counselor. And then as soon as the pandemic happened, all the old clients called, all her current clients panicked, and then all these new clients started calling, and she gets several calls a day and just can't do anything to help. And every session she says is about the pandemic,
Yeah.
worried about COVID stuff. And she's got several clients that are also suicidal, and she has to see them because if they don't see a person, they're going to kill themselves.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
A lot of it, a lot of it going on. And I would say for many people, their visit to the dental office may be one of the few encounters that they're having, with other people that close. So dentistry's on the forefront of this. So thanks for weighing in on that. So first skill, calming. Here's some suggestions for discussion. Again, what I'd recommend is, take some notes. This will be coming in your handout, but these merit conversation with the team. And in terms of how everybody's is addressing these. So number one with calming is just self-awareness of where you are emotionally. If you are down, depressed, whatever it is, but just a self-awareness of, okay, I'm going through something here. We've talked for years about the 5 stages of grief, getting everybody educated on that, and having a culture, or at least a self-awareness that when you're feeling something, it's okay. That the emotional part of this is part of the whole process, and it's okay. And you need to be aware of what's going on so that you've got that consciousness. So self-awareness is the one of the first key things. And then, here's all the basics that we all know is, breathing. A lot of times under stress, we quit breathing. So it's just breathing, taking, clean, big breaths, getting out, getting some fresh air. But just oxygen helps a lot in all of the experience that we have had personally in our family with the airway issue that many of you are familiar with. I've had extensive surgery to open up my airway. All of my children have been treated orthodontically to open up their airway. And I am, to this day, just in looking back at that whole experience, shocked at the behavior change that took place in 2 of my children specifically when they could breathe. A marked difference in behavior. Anxiety went down, behavior got cleaned up. It was amazing just by getting oxygen in the system. So when you think about it, you can do without water for a while, you can do without food for days. You can only do without oxygen for a very, very short period of time, minutes. And yet, we don't talk about that a lot in terms of just as a tool just for calming. So breathe, knowing how to breathe to calm yourself down, not hyperventilating, but just breathing. Meditation, great recommendation just on a daily basis to take that time alone and just go through that process to get centered and grounded. Gratitude, there's a ton of research that has come about, that's been around for a while, and some new research as well, just the emotional impact of going through a gratitude exercise every day, just even writing 3 things down for which you are grateful, again, is part of that whole process. And then finally, exercise is, again, absolutely critical as part of that habit. So there are others, but these are just some quick 5 reminders on the calming end of things. What is the process? What are the skills? What are the tools that you and your team are using on a daily basis to stay emotionally grounded? Skill number 2 is self-efficacy. You may or may not be familiar with this term. Let me give you the definition. if you're familiar with Dr. Albert Bandura, who is a well-known authority in this area, he's did a tremendous amount of work in this, and this is how he defined self-efficacy. How well one, meaning you, all of us, how well someone can execute courses of action required to deal with prospective situations. So bottom line, you could say just basic problem solving skills. How skilled someone is at thinking through a problem, putting together a plan, and then executing that plan. So here's another way to look at it. It's basically your belief in your own ability to succeed in achieving a goal. And I would like to add identifying what the goal is for starters. So as an example of this, you're all familiar with the work that we do through Eagle University with high school and college students. And all of the information now that's coming back from college counselors, they are twofold. One, currently, high levels of emotional and mental health issues in college campuses today, in particular because of what's going on. And number two, just in general, over the last few years, college counselors are saying that they are spending more and more time counseling college students on just regular life skills, budgeting, time management, just dealing with day-to-day living issues, just what you have to do to live. They're having to deal a lot more with that. So when we talk about this in terms of just a person's ability to identify a problem, then map out possible solutions, and then execute the action needed to then achieve the goal. A lot of times we take that for granted, but those are skills that at some point we all developed and we have to develop. So here's there's 5 self-efficacy suggestions that will increase someone's ability to be able to navigate uncharted territory. So number 1 is to recall times that you succeeded and how you did it. So this goes back to, if you'll remember, those of you that have been with us, the work that Lanny Basham has done, our resident gold medal athlete, the mental management expert. This is one of the things that he recommends is that you go back to your successes, right? The best things that happen, and not only recall those, but mentally walk through what happened to succeed. What are the specific steps that you took to get the outcome that you wanted? And take the mental time to go back and recall those, identify them, and consciously bring them to the forefront. And as you recall those, then that gives you the ability then to repeat some of those same things, some of those same actions. So what did you do? When you succeeded, how did you do it? And then how that might apply. Suggestion number 2 is observe how others are going at setting their goals and accomplishments. So copy genius, right? No newsflash here, is look at how others navigate through. How are they identifying problems? How are they coming up with their plan of action? And then how do they go about executing? So be observant, watch others, copy genius. Number 3 is mentors, right? Get feedback from trusted sources, get feedback from other people, right? So the interesting thing about what we're going through is it is now an interesting time to reevaluate who the real connections are, right? In other words, who are the people you're really connected to, because those are the ones you tend to go back to most often. right? So this, again, who are the mentors, who are the people you can trust to go back that are trusted sources to give good feedback, advice, and counsel. Next is then forward focus is to visualize the accomplishment of what you're trying to accomplish and how you will get there. So mentally and consciously walk through step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's how I am going to go about doing it. As that might seem unnecessary, just going through the mental process is a part of self-efficacy. And then finally is, again, a self-awareness thing, is to read your body and your emotions and build on positive emotions, right? As amplify those. So those are 5 recommended specific activities in which to engage to build self-efficacy and the ability to navigate through uncharted waters, come up with solutions, and then be able to execute. Number 3 part of this whole mental health piece is connectedness. And as we were talking about earlier, this becomes and is one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with. So, who really are the friends, the family members you can count on? Your morning opportunity meeting is a great place for connectedness. Your whole practice culture needs more work today than ever before, going back to your culture guide and really being focused on the glue of the things that really keeps your team together needs more emphasis now than maybe ever before. One of the fortunate things, as I've mentioned before, right now is that in dentistry is one of the fewer professions, occupations today, where you actually get person-to-person contact all day. And while that does carry some risks on the infection control side, it does have a lot of emotional benefits. So just by coming to work every day, you and the team, there would be science around the fact that that is very, very healthy. So this piece, there's another whole layer of this is connectedness is one thing. What you are doing to connect is another. So, for example, if you have someone with whom you are highly connected that you talk to on a daily basis, and all of the chatter is negative and about the pandemic and politics and the whole deal, and it becomes then an emotional drain, that may not be the most positive connection. So there may need to be some decisions about what you are going to connect about. So let me just give you a personal example of this. I have 4 older children that are spread out all over the country. And I have found, I shared this with my team earlier, I have found more recently, just within the last 30 days, that the need for connectivity is increasing. We would be in a routine, they're busy, a lot going on, the whole deal, and we would connect periodically throughout the week. I am now finding that daily connection with them is a high priority. In one particular case, I had one of my college age children that called me, and to her credit, specifically said, "Dad, I need more of you right now," which I thought was great of her to step up and voice she needed more connectivity. And so we interact throughout the day. We talk several times a day. So on the flip side of that, not the flip side, but a related side, I spent some time last week with my 93-year-old mother, who has not had anyone in her house, with the exception of one sister who goes in to help out, but she's very self-sufficient, but she's been very, very careful. But she's had no human contact in her household now for 5 months. And that that takes its emotional toll. And we talked about that. So being sensitive to the people around you, as well as really the connectivity thing, is we are not wired to do this experience, that experience meaning life, alone. All of the science is now points to the fact that connectivity is critical, is essential to human existence. And now in an era where we have all the social distancing and all the things we're going on, it becomes even that more critical to think through it. So next one is hope. So skill number 4 is hope. And here's the definition of that. I think we all know what hope is, but I thought the definition might be helpful. So hope is a feeling of expectation, is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. So we're going through a time, and I'm sure you have all had expressions of this, like I have, of hopelessness, meaning, especially in the phase that we're in now, I think a lot of people thought, hey, when we get into the summer, this thing is going to subside. And, the caseload continues up. So it's kind of like, when is this going to end? So feelings of hopelessness creep in. And as Toffer has highlighted here, it is taxing the mental health profession. So how do you build hope? Here's a couple of suggestions. Again, focusing on best things. So we've talked about this as part of your morning opportunity meeting. And again, making sure that stays in place every day, that you focus on the best things that happened yesterday. I might suggest here that you open this up a little bit, and that we typically don't recommend this, but in this case, that sharing some personal things, allowing your team to share some personal things of some best things that are happening on the home front, and keeping things focused, because focusing on best things and building on those builds hope. Staying away from the news. We've talked about this for years as well. But I would highly recommend going on a serious news diet. It is very, very easy to get sucked into the negative vortex that's going on with all of the news. So again, being informed, I think, is one thing, but overindulging in news that is not going to help your psyche, I would highly recommend that get a relook, especially with much human contact as goes on in the office every day. Keeping yourself mentally on the positive side is critical. You're all familiar with this acronym. I love this acronym, WIN, What's Important Now. In a previous Leadership Academy session, I highlighted a story that was in the Washington Post in April of a 104-year-old woman who is alive, well, living on her own, and finding great ways to help her neighbors. And her name is Lucille Elson. And one of the things that she highlighted in this interview, and she, of course, brought up the fact that she was born during the Spanish flu epidemic 100 years ago, right before that broke out. And she's lived through World War I and World War II and Vietnam and Korea and, all of the things that have happened. And she said, look, the one skill that has saved me is getting up in the morning and writing down the things that I need to do today. What's important now? And focusing on what I can do today. Not worrying about things that I can't do anything about tomorrow and the things that, but what do I need to do today that's going to make a difference, a positive impact? What do I need to do in my life? What's important now? So this is one that might merit, if you don't have it up on the office wall already, is to put it up on the break room wall and have a discussion about this skill. I might even suggest this is a self-efficacy skill. What's important now? What do we need to focus on right now personally as well as a team that is going to make the difference today? Service. There are so many opportunities for this, especially right now. It is very difficult to feel down and depressed when you are helping other people. And there's some great ways to do this, even volunteering for Meals on Wheels or doing things. There's some science around this, and I'll just note this, that in all of the research that's been done on service and its impact, the science seems to say that a minimum of 2 hours a week is an optimal amount of minimum time to spend serving. And in all the studies that have been done, they find that doing 2 hours of focused service will do more for you emotionally than doing 15 minutes a day. So just having that focused time once a week. So food for thought on that one. Smiles for Life might qualify as being service since it's a money raiser. We're still in the middle of the Smiles for Life campaign. So that might qualify as being part of service. But in terms of engendering hope, huge impact. And then again, I've mentioned this before, just the whole practice of having an attitude of gratitude, actually writing it down, doing an exercise every day where you focus on the things for which you are grateful. So that's hope. Finally is a sense of safety. And again, I would suggest this is probably number one in dentistry right now. So here's a couple of reminders. I entitled this Security, Safety and Security, and some things we all need to be on top of. So one, physical security in our environment in dentistry is top priority. Infection control, following all of those, the plans that we've suggested today, I would suggest that a plan is better than no plan, and an imperfect plan is better than no plan at all. Having a plan and giving the team a sense that ongoing, this is a piece of what we do and how we do it, and top priority is keep everybody safe. Number two is financial security, which is how's the practice doing, and personal performance along those areas. So fortunately, dentistry is thriving right now and doing very, very well. The bounce back has been awesome, and most of you are experiencing that in your practice. And so keeping that in mind, financial security is a big piece of the whole safety equation. And then finally, the emotional security, emotional safety, listening, communicating, and especially with your team, letting them know that their opinion matters, that they matter, is a big part of the whole safety equation. So again, if I had to put these in priority, this would be number one, is to re-look at safety and security. Fortunately, in dentistry, when we talked about the whole, what's the protocol for, testing positive, there was a great comment on the Crown Council email network last week. This has been a well-discussed topic. And one of the comments was, in dentistry, we treat everyone as if they have some kind of an infectious disease. We have for decades, that has been the protocol, that we keep ourselves safe, we keep our patients safe, and we treat everybody. Not that they do, but we treat it as if they do so that everybody is safe. And that's, I think, an important thing to remind the team, is that, we do these things, we've always done them. We're obviously taking a higher level of concern because of the nature of what's going on, but it's how we operate. And gratefully, we are now in a place months into this where dentistry is proven nationwide. It is an extremely safe place to be. It may be the safest place to be. Certainly a lot safer than a bar or a restaurant, and a lot safer than church, ironically. So dentistry is doing an awesome job as we move through this. So those are just some suggestions on the mental health front, those 5 skills. So again, those will be in your handout and the detail along with them, and something that we hope you'll share with your team as you move forward, so that they are mentally healthy, you're mentally healthy, and we can lessen the load on people like Toffer Chaffin's wife, uh, who is doing overtime in this area with people. So we hope that helps as you apply that personally as well as professionally. Toffer, any other comments there on the mental health area? We good?
I think you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, she's extremely overwhelmed, so anything that can prevent that and create that connection is going to be helpful for the world.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing with us. We appreciate it. So here would be
I will.
the next piece, which is we have talked about 4 areas today that are current, topical, and needed. As far as, what do you do when a team member tests positive? How are you handling your schedule with, the ups and downs with patients' concerns? What are you doing to upgrade your current and your future team? And then finally, what are you doing to manage your own and your team's mental health? So our challenge to you is specific action items here moving forward of what you are going to do. So for example, one of the action items might be, if you haven't done so already, to take the graphic, take the chart, and present that to your team of, here's our protocol. If someone tests positive, this is the general route that we are going to take. So that they know that there is at least some kind of a plan that you've thought through that is in place. So that might be an action item. Taking the verbal skills that Chris shared today and printing those out, sharing them with your team so that they know exactly what to say. And there are other areas that probably need to be scripted out as well. You cannot leave things to the imagination here. Another is taking the whole, those 5 steps for mental health, sharing those, putting a team meeting together, or you might deal with one of those a day and just review it with your team. But some self-reflection on what your plan is moving forward to stay emotionally and mentally healthy. So we hope that you'll take some time and action plan out what we've talked about this morning so that you put that in place. And we hope it's timely and helpful at this specific time. A couple of announcements, things to be very aware of. We have mapped out the Leadership Academy schedule for the next year. And we have made the decision based on your feedback and our ability to deliver things on a timely basis that we are going to do Leadership Academy at least quarterly. And we may do them more frequently as things change. These are the 4 dates, the 4 quarterly dates that you can count on for sure, with others that we may add. So the first one, which has been on the calendar for quite some time, October 23rd. So that will be online. And it will be from 10 a.m. Central Time until 2. So it'll be a 4-hour experience, a little longer than what we've done today. And so if you would calendar that, that will be an interactive experience. It will not be just lecture, but it will be interactive. We will have discussion groups, we have assignments. And so prepping to be there and be present and be focused is going to be critically important. So we hope you'll schedule that. We will have on October 23rd, as originally planned, we will have the Business Assistants Leadership Academy going on at the same time, and it will be online. So we'll be sending you specific information on that, but that will be going on at the same time. So your business assistants can be in a separate room from you. They can even do it at home if they'd like, but that will be going on at the same time on October 23rd. And then the subsequent dates as well. And we'll be announcing what we will be doing now moving in the future for specific team member training that we have done in the past in conjunction with these. But you can count on your business assistants for October 23rd. So we hope you'll put those on the calendar, 10 to 2 Central Time on each of those days. Plan that ahead. There is no more critical time, I think, in our whole history where leadership has been so critical. And so we hope you'll set the time aside to make that a priority to sharpen your leadership skills. In addition, we are planning and have scheduled more total immersion courses online. The next one will be Friday, August 21st. And then again on Friday, September 25th. So these are 2 separate courses. If you have new team members, we're ramping this up because there is a lot of new team members in dentistry. So we highly recommend you get your new team members engaged in this, as well as a refresher course for any existing team members. So those are 2 upcoming dates to choose from, as well as No More Hygiene online. The next 2 dates are September 11th and October 16th. So those are being updated on the website. What I would recommend is that, and I'm going to ask Susan Pruitt to unmute yourself, is that you connect with Susan on our team at the 800 number there. Susan, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I know we have many of you who attend regularly to Leadership Academy in Dallas, but now we've opened it up. So no matter where you are in the country, you all can be a part of that. And as Steve mentioned, it is going to be 4 sessions for the doctors this next year. So I would highly encourage you to put that on your calendar. That will be something you will not want to miss. Every single time when Steve and Pam and all of our practice advisors are leading you as doctors, one of the things I hear over and over, how much I needed that when they leave. So we invite you, if you have never experienced this before, or if this is your first time, to plan on joining. We will have registration online that will be available. And I also just want to put a plug for Total Immersion and No More Hygiene online. As you know, we love doing courses face-to-face. We know the difference that it makes. However, we've come up with the next best thing. As we have been training online for the last 4 or 5 months, one of the things that we and I hear, because when after the course, many of you have called and said, wow, I had no idea that y'all would be able to deliver as great as it was in person. So if you have new team members that need training, or if your team has never been to Total Immersion or No More Hygiene, take advantage of these dates. The cost is low and your team is worth investing in. I also want to say, when Steve talked about the win, if you want to have the win with your team now, these 2 courses will make a huge impact. I promise you, not only professionally, but personally, they will leave changed in every aspect of their life. So we hope you can join us. Please feel free to call us. We are here to support you every step of the way, and we thank you for being with us today.
Very good. Thanks, Susan. One other thing I'll just mention is our practice advisor team, which you're all familiar with, has done just an amazing job. I am privileged and honored to work with all of them through this entire experience. They have just done amazing, amazing work sifting through and just putting together content and the things that we all need right now, including we've added a whole other dimension to what we're able to do with practices, which is offering some virtual coaching, doing a lot of that online, as well as in the office face to face. And so we're doing a lot more of that. And so my recommendation would be, if you have any questions specifically and you're working through all the different issues in your practice, again, connectivity that we've talked about today. Don't suffer in silence. There are a lot of resources through the Crown Council, through Total Patient Service, through our practice advisor team that we can point you to. So if you have any questions at all, give our team a call, get on the website, do the live chat function on our website. There's a lot of different ways you can connect with us at any moment, and we encourage you to do that. We're very, very grateful. I think all of you would echo, for as much as dentistry has gone through, especially at the beginning, as an industry, to be where we are today. I think we're all grateful that dentistry is thriving, patient flow is good, and so there is a lot to be grateful for. And we've talked a lot about gratitude today, and we're grateful to be part of your team. And thank you for allowing us to be part of that whole process. Hope this has been helpful today. Thanks for joining us.
And please tell her thank you.
Our next scheduled Leadership Academy, again, October 23rd. We may do another one of these between now and then, depending on how things change. But I want to thank our team, especially for all of their hard work. Those that you've heard from today, as well as those that you did not hear from today. This has been a team effort. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and look forward to being with you again soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.